started?
Sure. Why don't we do that?
Okay. So welcome to today's Mark's Delegate meeting. I'm Douglas Burks, Mark Board Secretary. I'm standing in for Mark President Roellen Sinkowicz and Vice President Elizabeth Brown. So you're at the bottom of the barrel. I represent the Religious Society of Friends, and I'm a member of Mark. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing one of my fellow friends to open our meeting with a few words, followed by an inclusive prayer. Jim Newby is a member of Cincinnati Friends Meeting, where he serves as their pastoral minister. Jim?
Thank you, Douglas. I see at least one other Quaker here, J.P. Lund from Eastern Hills Meeting. And so it's good to have a good delegation of Quakers. We need one another for support. We're such a small group, really. So it's always good to see at least three here. I come from the Cincinnati Friends Meeting, which is we call it a semi-programmed Friends Meeting, which means they have a minister and public friend, they call me. And I represent Quakers in the community of Cincinnati whenever I can. And it also means that I deliver a message each week. Many messages among Quakers come out of the silence, as does mine, but mine is usually prepared ahead of time. And so that makes a difference. I just got back from England. I've been over there in what we call the 1652 country of George Fox, and traveled the hills and dales, climbing Pindle Hill and Furbank Fell and all of those other very important Quaker spots. And unfortunately, our group, which was 15 of us from Cincinnati Meeting, tripled the worship wherever we went. Quakers in England are a very small group, but they do a very important work. If you ever get to London, you'll notice right across from the Euston Station is the Friends House. It's a massive building, really, for such a small group, but it does a lot of good charitable work and is the center of Quakerism in England. So next time you take the train into Euston Station, be sure to drop off your regards across the street. Let us pray. Gracious God, we come together today in a spirit of gratitude. We are grateful for each person gathered here representing many others within their faith traditions. We're also grateful for Mark and its leadership through the years, as well as the important work that this organization does in our city of Cincinnati. As we consider the issues before us this day, we ask for your love to surround us and for your light to guide us. Loving God, our hearts are heavy because of the continued war taking place in Gaza. With each person and soldier killed or maimed, we are reminded that our work for peace and justice is far from over. We pray for peace, and we ask that our eyes be open to recognize each other as brothers and sisters in a common humanity. Help us, O God, to be agents of hope in a world that is filled with so much hopelessness. Amen.
Amen.
Doug, you have to, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Jim. We will now move on to the judicatory roll call for attendance. Holly Toensing, Mark's office manager, will record the roll call. You ready, Holly?
I am.
Okay. American Baptist Church Miami Association.
Mark Basil.
Archdiocese of Cincinnati.
Connie Widmer, Andrew Musgrave, Lee Wilson, Karen Martin, Mary Partee, Pat Whitberg. Pat Whitberg.
Yep, just got here.
Okay.
Cincinnati Islamic Community Center of Cincinnati.
I don't believe Tyrone is here today.
Yeah, okay.
Tyrone Jackson.
Right. Diocese of Southern Ohio.
Melanie Slane was here.
Yeah, she's here. She put
I'm
her
here. I'm present.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Melanie.
Disciples of Christ Christian Church of Southern Ohio.
Thomas Lawrence.
And David Teetsor. Yeah. Okay.
Jewish Community Relations Council of the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati. Ohio River Valley District United Methodist Church.
Mary Owens.
We're actually the Great Miami River District.
Yeah, you see, I'll write that down and I'm gonna make sure they get on it since I'm
And
not
yeah.
on.
Rhonda Deal,
Legit.
Mary Beth Owens,
Dwayne Gordon.
Dwayne Gordon. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Presbyterians of Cincinnati.
Aggie Shreves here from Knox.
From Knox. Thank you.
Okay. Religious Society of Friends of Greater Cincinnati.
I have Douglas Burks, Carol Burks, JP Lund, Jim Newby.
Unitarian Universalist Council of Greater Cincinnati.
Bob Lamb.
Dan Schneider.
Carol Fensel.
Carol Wommeldorf and Martha Walker. Her mic's not working.
Thank you.
United Church of Christ of Southern Ohio and Northern Kentucky Association.
Dan Weingeisy.
Volunteers of America of Ohio and Indiana. Do we have any guests that we have not seen?
We have a Cincinnati Public Schools District Superintendent, Iranetta Wright.
Who is the read.ai meeting? Oh, maybe that's something different. Meeting notes. I think that's something different.
I think that Zoom now has a AI option that they listen to us, they take notes and summarize what we all thought.
It's in the chat. There's an explanation in the chat.
Okay, yeah. Any other guests?
Oh, it was Bernard Young who added.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll put Bernard Young down.
Okay. All right, I think I have everybody then.
Okay.
How do we feel about AI summarizing the meeting? I have some concerns about that.
I do too.
Okay, Bernard, if you could not record on the AI for the summary of the meeting, please.
I think he's tried and he doesn't know how to delete it. I'm
okay.
guessing that that Holly can just uninvite them, like remove them from the meeting.
Remove permission to record. Yeah. Okay.
So welcome, everyone. I'm really glad that you're here today. I'm also glad that we have a little bit of sunshine. The next thing on our agenda is to approve our Delegates Council meeting minutes for last month. You received them in your packet. You can go to the materials you received in the announcement today if you want to download a copy to take a look at them. Does anyone want to, are there any corrections that anyone wants? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll approve the minutes as presented.
A second. Mary Beth seconds. Everyone who approves, raise your hand or say aye. Any objections? Our minutes are so approved. You have also received for today an agenda. Again, it is available online with the materials that you have been sent. Do we have a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved, or motion.
Seconded.
Okay, approval, raise your hands or say aye. Any objections? Our agenda is approved. We will now receive some comments and a brief update on what Mark has been up to from our executive director, Peg Fox.
Okay. I'll make this brief and then I'll introduce Dan Weingeisy to give a summary of the current search committee's process and number of candidates applied so far and all of that stuff. So under community violence prevention, we've been focusing mainly on the Mark photo ID card. We're up to 3,700 card holders. There is interest and has been interest from Columbus, One ID, as well as Cuyahoga County. And this has been going on for since the pandemic, so about 2 or 3 years. Conversations. The initiative has been being led by Legal Aid in Cuyahoga County. It's now up to the level of the county chief administrator. Myself and Heidi Cardona from Sukasa Catholic Charities, who's been coordinating the on-the-ground registrations for Catholic Charities. We spoke with the assistant director of the Department of Health and Human Services for Cuyahoga County yesterday, just going over the card, sending what the current information, current services the card offers, and generally the process that Mark went through in particular with Catholic Charities on trying to set it up. It was very productive, and it would not surprise me if Cuyahoga County eventually, pretty soon, had its own photo ID, which is wonderful. One ID Columbus started before Mark. Mark started its interest in the photo ID card and was asked by the Archbishop to organize that and take the lead to make it an interfaith endeavor. We have done so to the best of our ability, and we have worked with the Faith Action in South Carolina or in North Carolina, and have made great progress. So Columbus ID is a community organization, a nonprofit, and they have been real troopers. They've been at it since 2014 and unable to get a photo ID card. So Columbus is now at the stage where city council members are interested. So Mark will be on a Zoom call with those city council members in Columbus One ID in the future. So I want Mark to own the fact that it has had its photo ID card through thick or thin. All kinds of administrations at the federal level, all kinds of challenges that City of Cincinnati Police Department, as well as the current deputies in Safety Department with the Hamilton County, as well as other smaller municipalities that are in the county and surround the county. The law enforcement is on board, and that's a helpful thing. And we're continuing to move along. We do have now a French speaking, and have had for a couple months, for those folks from Africa as well as Haiti. And we've had a substantial photo ID drive at the Greater Cincinnati Islamic Center out in Westchester a couple months ago. We served 150 people. There were several hundred more waiting. We did not have the capacity to process that number of people. So in what Catholic Charities has done is they have hired a French-speaking person to coordinate the French-speaking and English photo ID registration, and she is from Senegal. So we're moving forward. I'm very pleased about that. And to remind everyone, the photo ID card, the Mark photo ID card, is a private ID card. It is not a municipal ID card. We were advised that things would not move forward if we pursued the municipal ID card. Cities can be sued by the federal government as well as other entities. So we have stuck with the private photo ID card, I think, to our credit, and it has not impacted the numbers of folks that are interested in the card or the number of ID drives registrations we have had. So municipal ID is great. New York City got sued, Chicago got sued, and a couple of other cities, I think Miami got sued during the administration in 2016 to 2012 or 2020. So, but that has changed, and New York City's municipal ID has held its own, as well as Chicago and Miami. So it's a mixed bag, but it's all helpful. With the affordable housing, again, I have been lifting up. Oh, one more thing on the photo ID card. The CEO of the Cincinnati Museum Center, Elizabeth Pierce, has approved the Mark photo ID card as a primary ID card, and is also giving anyone with the Mark ID card can come to the museum for only $2 a person, up to $10 people per card, and there's free parking. It also includes I think the Cincinnati, but don't quote me, the Railroad Freedom Center, as well as the Holocaust Museum. But I have to double check that. I know for sure it includes the Holocaust Museum because they are housed within the building of the Cincinnati Museum Center. So that's all good news. And that really took me by surprise, but a lot of surprises are very positive. So that's good. Now I'd like to have Pastor Dan Wyangeise, who's a past president of Mark and who's coordinating the executive search for a new executive director, to give a summary of where the search committee is at. Dan?
Great, thanks, Peg. Real quickly, real
proud to be part of the search team, which is made up of Adam Hall. All of these are past presidents. Adam Hall from the Archdiocese, Arlene Katz and Margie Meyer from the Jewish Federation, Bob Dye, Ministerial Alliance, Thomas Barnes, the Disciples, and Elizabeth Brown, who serves on the executive board. So we make up the search team. We've been receiving applications over the last month. May 3rd was the final day that we put for receiving applications. We are really, really pleased with the number of applicants, more just short of I think a dozen, maybe, or 11. Really pleased with the quality and diversity. And we are in a process now of whittling that down and then beginning to do the interview process in the next week or so. We will start that first via Zoom with, again, a smaller sample of candidates. And then from there, we will go forward. So going really well, and a great group to work with, and really pleased with the quality of applicants that we've received. Some known to Mark and involved with Mark, but others beyond this group. So it's really terrific. So that's it for now. We have a meeting this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and more I can share in the next week or so. We'll get that out in the communications with Holly. Holly's been terrific, and Peg also in this process. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan and Peg. Today, we are focusing on the Cincinnati Public Schools students and their needs and how the Cincinnati Public School system is addressing those student needs. It has been a long concern of Mark. Deja vu. In the 1970s, when Mark was young and I was young, the schools were facing desegregation. They were facing, how do we build a learning community and educate students in poverty and with great needs? They were dealing with financial crisis. They actually, in one of those years, had to end classes 2 weeks early in December because they ran out of money. So Superintendent Wright will feel those concerns very much because it's deja vu. Those challenges have been facing everyone. Today, CPS Superintendent Iranetta Wright joins us to share what some of those challenges are today and what progress looks like in the Cincinnati public school system. I encourage you to follow a process that we always try to work with when we look at issues, to listen, to learn, then to inform and interpret. I'm very excited to be able to listen to someone who is in the trenches and working hard for change. Today, she will give us background and context on students' needs and what has been going on for the past 2 years. She has several significant experiences in other school systems at different levels and has earned recognition. I'm not going to go into her bio because I want to have time that we can hear more and listen. But I really encourage you to go online, download if you haven't, and read her bio. It is one that should be looked at. We are so glad to have her here today to talk on this topic. There will be time for questions at the end of her presentation. And so it should be a good and lively discussion. Superintendent Wright, The floor is yours. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. If you can just give me a thumbs up, is everybody able to hear me okay? Awesome. All right. So I was asked, and I thank Ms. Fox for asking me to come earlier and share with the group kind of about where we are right now in Cincinnati Public Schools, what our last couple of years have looked like. My 2-year anniversary was last Thursday, and it's important to connect with that as we begin to move forward. And I come with, as Mr. Burks shared, I come with a lot of experience in public education. I am a product of public education. I'm a first-generation college kid, and public education just really did well by me. My family was a family that supported education. We believe in education, but I know that education is the great equalizer. I think more important than anything in my resume, and thank you for sharing a little bit about my bio, but more important for me than anything in my resume is the passion that I have for seeing our children succeed. I believe that all children can succeed at very high levels if given the right circumstances and the right opportunities. One of the things that we notice in our school district, and you'll see some of this in the data in just a moment, is we have a school district where many of our students live in poverty. Many of them live in abject poverty, and they have for many years. That's not the only population of students that we have, but that's a large population of our children. And one of the things that really resonates with me that I am working to move the district forward on is poverty is not a disability. And so we want to make sure that we continue to work with our children, and we continue to give them the education that's not just going to allow them to survive, but an education that is going to allow them to thrive in this very, very changing world. So that's just a little bit about who I am, and at my core, why I do the work that I do every day, even when it's tough. That's one of the reasons that I do the work that I do. So I am going to share my screen. I don't have a whole lot of slides. I really want to make sure that I spend the time able to answer and engage in terms of questions, but I'll just give you some brief preview of where we are right now. Something just happened. All right, I'm sharing my screen here. You cannot start screen sharing while so someone else is sharing their screen, and so I cannot share my screen. I think, okay. Mary, you're okay. All right, so let me share my screen here, and I'll get started. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm in deja vu right now. I had to do so many Zoom conversations when it came to COVID, and I try to do as few of them as I can now as a product of that. All right, so as we get started, Cincinnati Public Schools is the second largest school district in Ohio. We have 66 schools, over 6,000 employees. We serve about 36,000 students. Our largest population of students is African American. Our Black students are about 60%. Our white students are 21%, and the other, about 20% makes up everything else. We are the largest provider of special education in Southwest Ohio. We serve all of our CPS schools and 25 charter, private, and parochial schools. 84% of our students are free or reduced lunch. And that's relevant because free or reduced lunch is used to determine the poverty level for students. And so 84% of our students are free or reduced lunch. We transport, and this is really important, we transport over 14,000 students by yellow bus because we transport all of our CPS students, but we also transport all of our charter and non-public schools. So that's charter, private, and parochial. That is a requirement from the state, but we actually transport all students in the city. And we have over 8,000 students that are transported on Metro. So our high school students, primarily 9th through 12th grade, are on Metro, and we have about 2,000 7th and 8th grade students, 2,000 7th through 8th grade students that are also taking Metro daily. In terms of our overall board goals and priorities, we call them goals and guardrails. We started this work when I came to the district. I came May 2nd of 2022. By December of 2022, we had board approved goals and guardrails. And if you notice what our goals are, it calls out specifically, these are the 5 areas that we're looking to focus on for the next 5 years so that we're looking to move our students forward. As we really talk about why some of these things are listed, when you see what the goals and the guardrails are, the goals are specific to movement and improved outcomes for children in our school district. So our goals specifically are around our 3rd grade proficiency. We know that that we really have a push and a focus to make certain that we're starting students off in the right space. And so that starts with the first level of assessment for the students is at 3rd grade. We also want to make sure that we're shrinking the gap between our African American and multiracial students with everyone else when it comes to reading proficiency. There's a huge gap right now, it really across the board in the district, with reading proficiency, with math proficiency, with disciplinary practices when it comes to our Black students and our students that are not Black. The other one that's a huge goal for us is Algebra 1, and Algebra 1 is listed here for a couple of reasons. Algebra 1 is what we would call a gateway course for high school. And essentially what that means is Algebra 1 is the only course in terms of the end of course exam, in terms of a test. The Algebra 1 end of course exam is the only exam that high school students have to pass in order to graduate. So that's one reason that's important, but it's also equally important because we want our students to have access to higher level math programming, right? We want them to be able to not just stop at Algebra 1, but to move forward in the higher level programming for math. And if they can't pass Algebra 1, then it makes it difficult for them to move forward in terms of what's happening for the higher level courses. We also want to increase our students, our African American and Hispanic students, our multilingual or multicultural students graduating with college credit plus credit. And that essentially means that they have taken college courses before they graduate. Why is that important? It's important because if they do that, not only do they get the college credit for doing that, but we also pay for it. So it's not something that families have to pay for. It gives them an opportunity to go to college and get college coursework and not have the burden of the pay for that. So we're really looking to increase that, as well as increasing our workforce credential. And so that essentially means that as students graduate, we want to make sure that they're on, one of 3 paths, so to speak. And sometimes it's a combination of those paths. So either they're enrolling in college, they're enlisting in the military, or they're employed, they're going into the world of work and they have employable skills. And for many students, it's a combination of many of those things, but making sure they're ready to do that. So we're looking to increase the experiences that they have before they graduate so that they have workforce credentials. And our last, of course, and it's the last one on the list, but it's really one of the most important, and that is increasing the number of students that are graduating on time in 4 years. Our graduation rate has not been as strong as we would like for it to be. And so we want to make sure that over that next 5-year period, and we actually are about 3 years from that space now, but over the next 3-year period, that we are seeing an increase in graduation rate. And that means that we're looking at students when they enter the 9th grade, graduating from high school with all of the requirements by the time they're in 12th grade. So just those 4 years. The guardrails represent the values of the community. And as we look at these particular goals, these are the goals that we set. These are the ones that we monitor. These are the goals that we are giving feedback on twice a year to the board in open session. And so it's available for the community. How we're progressing in these goals is on our website. And the guardrails essentially are the other areas that we're focused on in terms of, yes, we want to reach the goals, but we want to reach the goals without doing the things that are in the guardrails, because these are the things that are of value to the community. So we want to make sure that we're looking at the whole child, that we're culturally sensitive in terms of discipline and what discipline treatment looks like, that we are increasing our communication and we have adequate distribution of resources, and that we're really looking at chronic absenteeism, because if our students are not in school, they obviously cannot learn. So we want to make sure that we're looking at those areas, and that we also continue to look at the pursuit of equity in terms of working with our community. Okay. All right, and so from there, from our goals and our guardrails, we were able to develop our strategic plan. This went through several different iterations where we met about the areas that were of the greatest concern to the district, so that these are the areas that we focus on to move our school district forward. And in no particular order, support of our students, making certain that we, again, will provide students equitable access to knowledge, skills, and resources so that they're in control of their future. Equipping our educators, and that's really about professional learning and professional opportunities so that we're building the capacity of all of our educators through high quality ongoing learning and development. Connecting with the community so that we're creating and sustaining pathways for all community stakeholders to be present in the lives of our students daily. Igniting innovation, and we're thinking here, as we're able to provide the best service for students, families, and the community, and doing that in a collaborative way so that we're reimagining the way that we do our work. And last but not least is optimizing operations, developing effective, responsive ways of operating, so that, again, in order for these things to happen, this is foundational to the work that we look to do as we move forward. Our strategic plan is actually on our website. And so if you would like more information about the individual strategies that are part of the strategic plan, you can go to our website, go to leadership, go to superintendent or board, and you're able to see our goals and guardrails, you're able to see our strategic plan, and you're able to really drill into what we're doing in terms of strategies. The next set of slides are really important to me because it celebrates some of the work and accomplishments that we've been able to attain over the last couple of years in terms of priorities and impact. So I'm not sure, and I'm a teacher, so if you'll just indulge me as we do this part, as I'm looking at the groups here. If I say something that you did not know as we go through this portion, if you would just give me a thumbs up, right? If I say something that's new information to you. So in terms of academics, we're prioritizing robust educational programs to ensure all students have access to quality learning opportunities. So some things that have happened, and in terms of math, it was in the New York Times, I want to say on February the 28th, but for math, our school district showed the second fastest improvement in terms of recovery from COVID based on last year's data alone in terms of math. And that's where there was a study that was done joint between Stanford and Harvard researchers. They identified where schools were pre-COVID, starting in 18-19, and then they looked at how students performed, not the year of COVID, 19-20, but all of the other years. So 18-19, 20-21, 21-22. They got that information as baseline, and then they used the data from 22-23, which was my first full school year. Last school year, they used that data to then determine what level of recovery had actually happened in each of the spaces. And so Cincinnati Public Schools actually had the second highest rate of math recovery in the country of all urban school districts. The number one recovery was Jackson, Mississippi, and we were second. And that's relevant because prior to that, 18-19 included, there had been a decline every year. And so that was the first year that we were able to make up two things: the year of growth for students, but also move into so the first year in terms of them getting what they needed to get, but also recovering to 3/4 of what they missed from before. So we actually were able to make up about a year and 3/4 of a year in just that one school year. So that was relevant. We have the best third grade results in all of the Ohio 8. Ohio 8 represents all of the largest urban school districts in Ohio. In terms of our math performance, we increased our scores in math, our math percentages by 7 percentage points just last school year for that first year. We reduced the equity gaps in 6th grade reading outcomes by percentages as well. We had 9 of our schools that were recognized about 2 to 3 weeks ago because it was identified by the state that these 9 schools had state achievement of growth by 3 or more points in all of their growth areas as well. So not only did we see an improvement across the board in terms of our schools, our overall schools performing, we had an increase in the number of schools that got to what's considered a satisfactory rate at the state level, and that's a 3-star or higher. But we also had schools that within their growth areas, their growth area in terms of state was even greater than that. And so those 9 schools were recognized a couple of weeks ago from the state. Launching in the fall, and this really, really excites me, and this is a first for Cincinnati, where Cincinnati Public Schools completely. We are launching in the fall in partnership with the University of Cincinnati, our first college innovation pathway. And essentially what that means is that our students that go into the program as 9th graders would be able to earn their AA degree by the time they graduate from high school. So simultaneously, they're getting their high school credits, and they're also dually enrolled in college, so that after they graduate, when they graduate, they're graduating with an associate's degree. And that really saves families as well. That's a savings of about $50,000 just right now in terms of students going into that program. So that's the first for us, and we're really excited about that. If I said anything that you didn't already know, let me give me a thumbs up if you will. All right, I see some thumbs. Okay, all right, let's go to the next. The next is STEM and career education, and we're working to make sure that we are looking at our science, technology, and engineering. In STEM, we improved technical skill attainment for our students this past year by 6 percentage points, which is a huge deal. And we're continuing to launch the college innovation pathway with the University of Cincinnati. We're also working with one of our manufacturers to bring robust programming to one of our schools in terms of really making certain that students are ready for that manufacturing pathway. Social emotional learning and support. And when we think about one of the things that I think that COVID elevated really across the country was the need for students to have additional support in mental health. So all of our schools have mental health support within the school building, where students are able to get counseling at the school through the school programs. In terms of thinking about bullying and where that's been, and we know that there have been some pretty strong things that have happened in the city and in our school district around bullying, but we have been able to reduce the confirmed cases of bullying by 12%. And that's really important because we're looking at how we're working with restorative practices, how we're working with children, how we're thinking about character and character development. In terms of engagement, we've actually been able to see an increase by 6 percentage points for our overall increased school engagement for students, and we're continuing to look at restorative practices. Community and family engagement, we have expanded our parent engagement forum to 90% of our schools. This is the most in our history. So right now we have, last year we were at 54 schools that had a parent-teacher organization. Right now we're at 62. And so that's the most that we've had in this NCPS history. We also launched Be Present when I first came, and this was just an initiative that was a call to action to get as many individuals as possible to be engaged in what we were doing within the school district. Read to Lead is a part of that. A part of what happens in that process is for the last 2 years, I have done monthly Be Present sessions where I go to different locations in the community and just do a brief presentation and then open up for questions. So it's been a way to engage across sections of the community. Most recently today, I had my 6th coffee chat with the soup. 6 weeks ago, we started a new level of engagement for Be Present, and that was a way to end the school year. But I've gone to 6 different coffee shops in the area, and individuals can just come in and sit and have conversations. So if you are not plugged into our Cincinnati Public Schools social media sites or our webpage, please do so, because it does keep you informed about what we're doing across the district. And we've had overall organizational improvements just collectively in the work that we're doing. One of the areas is that has been highlighted for us in terms of thinking about needs for students is the board passed a resolution in 2022 to inform families about safe gun storage and locking, and this was done with Moms Demand Action and Be Smart. And so we're continuing to partner with the City of Cincinnati, CPD, and community members to address youth violence. We trained approximately 4,000 students this year in Stop the Bleed training, and that was in partnership with the University of, with UC Health and all of our staff members as well. And we also updated our code of conduct so that we would ensure that we included more restoration and restorative practices. There was a specific question about Project Connect, and Project Connect is our program that works with our students that are experiencing housing insecurity. And this was founded in 1996. It really do advocacy work as we are thinking about our students that are experiencing housing insecurity. So this year we served over 3,700 students. That's a 24% increase from 22-23. And honestly, you know, as we think about it, and I know this is something that we know, and I know you definitely know this on this call, that is a large part of it has been due to insufficient affordable housing options for families. You know, we have an emergency housing program that does provide hotels and hotel access for parents as a shelter as well. And we do, through Project Connect, provide additional wraparound services for families to really help mitigate the impact that homelessness may cause for them. So when I think about needs and where we go next, this gives just an overview of where we are as an organization. When we think about be present, we still need individuals to be present. So we're still looking for, I'll go back to that slide. So we're still looking for individuals to serve. Whatever it is that you can do, we're looking for individuals to serve. So we're looking for individuals to serve as math tutors. We're looking for them to serve as reading tutors. We're looking for them to just go to school buildings and read to students, because that's something that we found that's a deficit and a challenge for many of our young people. I think it's also important that we think about how we may provide services to the schools that are in our neighborhoods, right? How we are able to partner with those schools and really determine what the individual needs are at the school, so that as we're looking at providing resources or as we're looking at providing additional support, we're doing that not blanketly, but doing that based on what the needs of the individual schools are. So I think I'll stop there. I know we only have a few minutes left. I do want to stop and give an opportunity for questions. So I'll stop there and open up for questions, if there are any.
Yes, Mary Beth Owens asked if Cincinnati Public Schools is partnering with Cincinnati State in any way.
So many of our partnerships at this point with Cincinnati State come in combination with our career and technical education programs. That's one of the areas. We are looking to expand that because Cincinnati State just has some amazing career and tech ed programs as well. And so as we're thinking about what we're doing through our manufacturing pathway, we're looking to expand that partnership. So really our partnership right now is through coursework. We do have CCP courses that are also offered through Cincinnati State as well.
Doug, you need to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Dwayne Gordon.
Thank you. I used to be involved with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and I know about 60% of the children in this area right now are currently receiving the free book a month through that program from birth to age 5. Do you think that that had an impact on the improvements we've seen recently on reading scores in the district, since that's been around for several years now?
I think that anytime students can get access to books, especially before they are in school, it's going to be beneficial for them. We support the Imagination Libraries. We help to fund that project as a part of the district, where our students are getting that resource before they actually come into the district. And so that's been something that has been that we've supported. I think the other thing that's also important is as many books as we can get to homes and families of students that don't have books. Many of them don't. And one of the strategies that we used this past summer that was really, really a huge strategy, it was working with our ELL families. And so a part of the vision was to go out to our English language learning families, our multilingual families, and take books to their homes. So we employed staff to go out to the homes the wonderful part about that resource is on the back of the book. There's a QR code that actually teaches the lesson. It was in English and in Spanish. And so not only did it provide support to the child, but it also provided support often to the family, because we know in a lot of our families where our students are multilingual, the parents are multilingual as well, and not all of them are proficient in English. So that was something that we did last year. We do know that it was really, really beneficial.
Tyrone Jackson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Tyrone Jackson. I represent the Cincinnati Islamic Community Center. Unfortunately, I had to jump on late. But my question is, you were sharing about this joint quote unquote venture with the University of Cincinnati, some type of associate program, given the value about maybe 50,000 or so. So my question is, I'd like to be able to share this information. So where can I maybe, just extend that information to others, whatever resource that I can, use to share people about that connection?
Definitely. So I will drop in the chat our district's webpage, because on our website, the information is listed there. This year it's being launched at Schroeder. So in order for students to be involved in the program, they would have to be students that are attending Schroeder. We had a information session last week for that, and there are 2 more information sessions that are coming up because students have to actually apply to the University of Cincinnati by June the 1st. And so I will, before we get off the line, I'll make sure that I have that link for you, and I'll drop it in the chat so that you can have access to it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have Carol Finn, and then Bernard Young, and then Maggie Shreve. Carol.
Hi. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the community learning centers. A few years ago, that was a fairly popular thing, and I'm wondering how many of the schools have them now, and if that's something that you're still working on.
So community learning centers have been foundational to Cincinnati Public Schools for over 20 years. And we still, all of our schools now are community learning centers. We fund a resource coordinator at each of the schools. And I say we fund it because we do as a district, we pay for the resource coordinator, and they then work for a lead agency that provides support to the school through the lead agency. So that is something that we still have in every one of our schools. There was some conversation this year, obviously because of the $90 million budget challenge that we had, about reimagining the program, but that was not well received at all. And so we heard that information and we moved forward. And so we really had to look at, how we're doing some other things instead.
Okay, from Bernard Young. At the different level for administration down to the community school, how are you connecting to the local neighborhoods?
Yeah, so I think in a few different ways. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, and I want to make sure that I understand the question. So our principals are active within the, and they attend their neighborhood council meetings. So the principals do that throughout the district. What we have done is, and I'll say what I've done personally, is and what I referenced earlier is, since May of 2022, actually after my first 100 days, I started in August having monthly Be Present sessions. And so that actually has taken us all across the city to different neighborhoods. When we go, we do invite the neighborhood councils from the different communities to come to the sessions where we are as well. And so that's just been another way to connect. So for example, and then I did this most recently, I've done the coffee chat that I talked about earlier. So it's really making sure that we have presence across the different neighborhoods and communities, recognizing that Cincinnati has 52 neighborhoods. And so as we think about that, our school district touches almost all of those neighborhoods. So one of the things that I really did this year, really pretty intentionally, was went to all of the council meetings for the villages, because that was really a population, while we serve the areas, that's really a population that, that they have their own governance and their own governance structure, but the school is still important to that process. So I was able to go to each of those meetings as well. I see in the question, I see in the chat parents, but I'm not sure what the question was.
Well, I think I know what it is. I'm from Mary Beth, but Maggie, I think, is next. And so trying to follow proper process order. So Maggie, and then I'll go to Mary Beth's question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for taking questions. My church was just asked by 2 different preschools to fund them this summer because of the cutoff at CPS. I do think that part of the administration of my church is saying, so what's the school's plan for future summers, even if there was no money for the preschool program this year? So could you address that a little bit?
I can. So a few different things. As I think many know, our school district started with a $90 million budget deficit as a reduction of ESSER funds. And ESSER funds is the education term. ESSER is education secondary relief funding. Essentially, it was the funds that we received as a part of COVID. So after COVID, school districts across the country received funding from the federal government for a variety of reasons. Initially, the first set of funding was to help them just maintain as a school district and make sure that people were still, still able to be paid and that they had technology for students. And then after that, it opened up to some other things. But it was shared with us, and I think I said it on this call. Maybe I didn't. I had another meeting this morning, so I'm not sure if I'm repeating myself. So if I said this before, I do apologize. April 27th was my 31st year in public education. I've been an administrator for the last 25 years. I was a principal, started being a principal 21 years ago. I share that because my last school district, I was responsible for the administration of COVID dollars. So when we received that information, the federal government told us that this is one-time money. You will not receive it again. We got it the first time. We did not know there was going to be an ESSER 2, and then we got ESSER 2. We did not know there was going to be an ESSER 3, and then we got ESSER 3. What our school district did, and it's not passing judgment, it's just the reality of what happened. What our school district did is we got the funding from ESSER. It was one-time funds, but we put a lot of recurring costs in one-time funding. So we put things that we needed to continue in a pot of money that was soft. It was going away. One of those things that was put there was summer programming. And in thinking about that, prior to ESSER, our school district had more of a summer recovery in terms of students came to school. If they needed credits to graduate, they came to summer. It was not something that was done collectively across the district. That's just looking at historically how Cincinnati did it. And in many of our schools, parents had to pay for the students to go to summer school. So with ESSER funding, that opened up a bit. However, ESSER funding is going away. And so what we've had to go back to thinking about now is identifying the populations of students that we still, summer school is an unfunded kind of situation. I would like to say an unfunded mandate. It's not really a mandate, but you do have to have something to offer some support to students that are having some additional challenges. So this year, we focused on just a few areas. One has been our third grade students that have not received a promotable score to move to the next grade level based on the state's requirement for the third grade reading law. The second population that we focused on has been our 9th through 12th grade students that are credit deficient. So students that need to earn the credits, we're trying to keep them on target to graduate on time. So we've offered opportunity there. Our special needs population, it is a part of their IEP that they need to go to summer. They need to have some kind of summer programming. And we've also looked at the same kind of support for our English language learning students. So it's been very specific for how we've been able to do that. I don't know that it's just a one-time concern. I think that that's where we are right now, unless something begins to change. And so that's where we are, and that's the reason.
So there's no future plan for how we might make sure that CPS can fund preschools next summer?
So there has not been discussion yet about funding of preschools for next summer. What we have been working on in terms of preschool has been making certain that we're doing our due diligence through our Cincinnati Preschool Promise and working with our schools and working with our Cincinnati Preschool Promise group in terms of the current funding that we have around those.
Okay, so Mary Beth Owen's question is, parent centers such as the one I saw at Rothenburg, do other CPS schools have them? Services available there? Rothenburg's provided clothing, shoes, shower facilities, laundry. I tutored at Rothenburg and worked with their parent center to help my student to get new clothes, shoes, and to encourage her to shower there.
Yeah, so that is one of the roles. So as I shared, all of our schools are community learning centers. And we have different, not all the schools have a shower accessible for them. But most of our schools, for example, do have a washer and dryer at the school for parents and for students. Many of our schools have clothing closets like the one that you're referring to. Most of them, and that really comes in with the work in partnership with the resource coordinator in terms of working with the lead agency, determining the needs of that particular school, and then working with the surrounding community to make sure that those resources are available at the school.
Okay, I have a question next, and then Peg. It's one of those deja vu questions, and I don't know if there's an easy answer. When we talk about structured inequality, we see the impact of that in urban school systems. When you take a look at Cincinnati, you take a look at the school systems that you have in Hyde Park, you take a look at over the Rhine. How and what are your strategies to try to bring equity to those very different learning communities, and in particular, to provide equitable services to those in poverty? Because that leads to a delegation of different amounts of money, likely in different areas.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And it's a question that is probably one of the reasons that I am getting some of the challenge that I'm getting right now. Because the reality is, I am willing to often say the things that other people won't say. But aside from saying the things that others won't say, generally there is a plan for how we can move forward in those spaces. When we think about funding collectively, our school district, because of the tax base of our community, our school district is considered a wealthy school district. So while we serve within the school district the same population of students that Cleveland serves in our school district, because our taxpayer and our tax base is greater in Cincinnati, there is more of a burden, if you will, on our taxpayers to support our local school district. So for us, for example, to be very specific, in terms of funding from the state, we get 42 cents on the dollar, and Cleveland gets 71 cents on the dollar. Whoa. One of the things that we saw, and many that attended our budget sessions, one of the things that we saw is we are getting less, but the needs of our students are increasing. And so we're seeing post-pandemic, we're seeing more students that are qualifying for special education services. We're seeing more students that are experiencing housing insecurity. So that's just the reality of what we deal with. I think one of the first things, however, as we begin to think about equity, it is equity in the quality of the education that students are getting in every one of their schools. And so that has been really, really strong for me in terms of what are our students getting curricularly? How are we making sure that the information that they are receiving at Rothenburg, to use your two examples, is the same information that they're receiving at Hyde Park? Even if students at Hyde Park are able to go a little faster, depending, it doesn't mean that the students at Rothenberg don't deserve to have the same information. And as we think about how we're providing intervention and services to students, we often know that in urban schools and schools that are in the urban core, many of the students come to school not prepared for school. So there is more catch up that's needed to happen, but we have to do the tough work to make that happen. And so as a high school principal, I was a middle school principal and a high school principal. I was a high school principal in the lowest performing high school in the state of Florida. And it had all the stereotypical things that you think about as you're thinking about an inner city or an urban environment. And in 4 years, we were able to move the school from an F to a B because of intentionality around looking at the resources that we had, around making sure that there was clarity around what we needed, around working with the children on what their areas of success were, but at the same time being very honest with them about where they needed to go and why. And so I think that that's the same approach that we're looking for in our district right now. And we've seen early indicators of improvement in those areas. Last year, we improved on the state report card. Some people like the state report card, some people don't, I get it. But all of the students in Ohio take the same assessment. And so just because our children, many of them are in poverty, it does not mean that they cannot achieve at high levels. And that's what I started this conversation with. And so I think that as we're working through that and working through the process, yes, recognize that and that's why I made the comment about working specifically with schools, for those that are looking to support, working specifically with schools, because the needs of schools like Rothenberg and the needs of a school like Hyde Park aren't necessarily the same, even though there may be students in Hyde Park that also need additional support as well. And so making sure that we're clear on those areas and that we are really unwavering on the commitment to what our students are getting in our school buildings.
Okay. Peg.
Thank you, Superintendent Wright. Your comments, it's interesting. Your comments about asking the hard questions, I can relate to that. So my question is, approximately, how many immigrant children have you received and since you've been here, or what is the portion of those children compared to non-immigrant children?
Yeah, so we have seen in the last 2 years, we have seen an increase upward of 35%, a 35% increase in our students that are multilingual. Most of our families, and this is just the nature of, how families, as they come into the city, how they're placed and where they're placed, to be honest. But most of our families are on the West Side. And so our schools on the West Side are seeing a real influx in our multilingual families and our immigrant families that are moving in. One of the things that we've done to begin to provide, and I will share with you that, as a middle school principal, I love the fact that I've had so many opportunities to have so many experiences, and it's so connected to where we are in Cincinnati, even though it's uncomfortable for some, it's the reality of where we are. When I was a middle school principal 21 years ago, because I came from Florida initially, I was in the Florida school system for almost 25 years before I went to Detroit. And when I was a principal 21 years ago, I had 42 different languages in my building 21 years ago. Yeah. So the experiences of being in that kind of melting pot at that time have resonated in the work that I've really been able to do in the way I think about that work. And I use it as an example because one of the things that's happened here, and it's happened in our school district, is the families started to move in so quickly that the school district was really not positioned to provide the level of support that's necessary as we think about the differing needs of our families that are moving in. So the school district has responded very quickly, I do believe. We have continued. Last year, we started a new process where, and it was received by some and not by others, but it was necessary, where we looked at schools that had the highest population, 30% or more of their families that were English language learners, and they received at their school building in terms of a resource, and this may answer some of your question, Mr. Burke, they received at their school an ELL coordinator. And so that's somebody at the school building to really be a conduit between the families and or offer additional support for the families and the schools. That was one of the areas. We've done additional training for teachers because, again, there's not a requirement in Ohio that teachers, once they get a student that is an English language learning student, that there's anything they have to do, right? They don't, but they're not necessarily prepared sometimes to work with the students. So we've done additional professional development for teachers. We're working this summer on a train-the-trainer model so that we have more individuals that are in the district that are able to provide the necessary training to teachers so that they're able to support students. So I think that there are a variety of things that we have done, but and this year we're also adding additional teachers. We've added 8 more ELL teachers this year. Well, for next year, we've added them in this budget cycle because we need to make sure that we're continuing to increase the number of ELL teachers so that they're able to support the students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is now 1:16, which is our ending time. And I want to say I grew up in Hartwell, and in many ways I was a first-generation college student. I had aunts and uncles who thought that we were wrong to send women to college. So congratulations on that great accomplishment, Superintendent Wright. You should be very proud of that and of your education and being a first-generation student. And it reflects how so many first-generation students thrive and contribute to society. You gave us a lot today to think about. We'd, I hope, learn quite a bit. So thank you very much for giving us time. I know that you're really busy right now. And so we very much appreciate that. I am very glad that you joined us today. I also want to thank.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing I hate about Zoom is that mute thing. I also want to thank Jim Newby for his comments and his opening prayer, and to thank all of you who attended today. We have a delegates meeting in June. You will be hearing updates on what it will be on and all of those kind of things. And so, again, thank you to everyone who came today, especially to that funny guy, Thomas Barnes, down there. It's nice to see you. And so, again, thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.